We've just seen all the new tariffs for BYD, 17.5%. That's on top of the existing 10% tariff, meaning BYD will have to pay a 27.5% tax, but it's much worse for MG. Their tariff is around 48%, 37.5 plus the 10% that was already in place. It's going to be an incredibly difficult time for some of these automakers to adjust to these changes in Europe. However, China says that these tariffs won't halt its EV expansion. It's not going to slow down. It doesn't care. Well, it does care, but it's not going to let it stop it. The nation has assured legacy car makers that it won't disrupt the stability of employment in Europe. What does that mean? Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching The Electric Viking. Great to see you. Big news here, guys. This is kind of like, wow. Some of these tariffs are above expectations, especially the fact that, experts thought it was going to be 25% on average for all manufacturers. It's not. It's different for all manufacturers. BYD, I believe their rate is about 17.5% plus the existing 10%, so about 27% for BYD. Geely is 20% plus the existing 10%, so about 30% for Geely. If you have not been assessed yet, if you haven't been assessed yet in terms of what you're doing, how much money you're receiving as a car company from the Chinese government, if that hasn't been assessed yet, for example, NIO, XPeng, etc., then you will pay the tariff of 20% that Geely are paying, plus the 10%. So I'm a bit confused on that. I think it's 20 plus 10. If it's only 20%, then automakers, I think they can handle that. 30%, that'll make things much more difficult. Now, automotive exports from China have slowed this year, to Europe anyway, but that has not discouraged the Chinese Passenger Car Association. The association's Secretary General says that Chinese automakers will develop in Europe and integrate into local markets. Now, I believe they're planning on maybe like a Trojan horse type scenario where they build factories like BYD are doing right now in Europe. However, whilst they would be building them in Europe, possibly even building battery factories there as well, they would be really making the cars in China and then simply assembling them in Europe in order to avoid these taxes. Electric vehicles made in China could soon be hit by these taxes. In fact, it's not soon, it's going to happen in 3 weeks from now. These tariffs will be imposed, I believe, on the 9th of July, only 3 weeks away. Now, some experts say that these tariffs will increase the prices of Chinese EVs in Europe. If that were to happen, then, well, Tesla vehicles would have a distinct advantage when it comes to price. And that would set them back. Now, I personally think if they were to increase, these Chinese manufacturers were to increase their prices, then that would hurt them. Their sales, which are not all that great right now, would probably go down. Chinese enterprises will continue to unswervingly develop in Europe and integrate into local markets, said China's government. The traditional car-making industry plays a big part in generating employment in Europe. Chinese firms won't take aggressive measures or low pricing moves to disrupt the stability of employment in Europe, they said. But now, with the news of these taxes being much higher than what was anticipated, I believe there's quite a bit of anger in China, which is, maybe justifiable. So, what are the rates? Okay, the duties imposed on all EV manufacturers that are not Geely, BYD, or SAIC, which is MG, of course, they will all be 21%, I believe, plus 10%. So that would in total be a total of 31%. That's quite a big tariff here. And this will certainly make it difficult for them. Now, the Chinese automakers that cooperated with the European Commission's investigation, they will get that tax. But if you don't cooperate, you'll get the full tax of 38.1%. So plus 10%, it would be then 48% if you don't cooperate with Chinese investigators, with European Union investigators, I should say. Now, the Chinese automakers that cooperated with the European Commission's investigation but didn't sample are alphabetically Aways, BMW Brilliance, Chang'an, Chery Dongfeng, FAW, Great Wall Motor, JAC, Leap Motor NIO, and XPeng. Those will receive an additional 21% duty. Combined with the current 10% import duty, the new import tariff then would be 31% for all those companies. Now that does include, like I said, BMW EVs made in China and then sold in Europe, and quite a few of them are. So this will have an effect on BMW. Import tariffs on China-made Teslas imported into the EU will face, apparently, a 21% tariff. So that's interesting. Now, that news has just come out recently, but Tesla apparently, here's what one comment was about Tesla. One EV producer in China, Tesla, has made a substantial request for a so-called individual examination in order to receive its duty level depending on the subsidies it received individually. This request is currently under examination, and a final assessment may be reflected in duty levels at the definitive stage. Very likely then, Tesla will actually receive the same duties or tax rate as BYD, which would be around 27-28% in total. The only EU Tesla-made car is the Model Y. So you can see that it's very likely Tesla will focus on selling the Model Y instead of the Model 3 in Europe in order to, avoid these taxes on the Model 3. So here are the cars, some of the brands that will be affected that are currently sold in China. MG, Smart, Polestar, Aura, BYD, Neo, Lotus, LEVC, Maxus, Aways, Lynk & Co, Dongfeng, Voya, Chang'an, Xpeng, and Zeekr. So interestingly, this Car News China says this implies that BYD and its supply chain received the fewest subsidies from the Chinese government. Thus, the provisional tariffs for BYD are the lowest. BYD is a privately owned company known for its extreme vertical integration, as it tries to handle as much as possible as it can in-house. Basically, the European Commission saying, we've looked into BYD, and while MG Motors, government-owned, they're getting a lot more subsidies than BYD are, so the fair thing to do here is to apply a much, much higher tax rate to MG versus BYD. Geely, though, clearly their tax rate is slightly higher than BYD, but much lower than MG. It's kind of like a big company. Geely own Lotus, they own Zeekr, Volvo, Polestar, Lynk & Co. Of course, London Electric Vehicle Company as well. And the EC, or the European Union, concluded their use of unfair subsidies was similar to BYD, but a bit higher, so they're paying a slightly higher tax rate. Now, here's the other interesting thing, guys. The joint venture between General Motors, SAIC, and Wuling, they are getting the top tariff of 38.1%. Now, Chinese state-owned automaker, which is SAIC, of course, as you know, SAIC, that 38.1% applies for all the brands that they own. And they own the MG brand, they own IM, Maxus, and Rising Auto. Now, clearly, the government in Europe, or the commission in Europe, believes they're getting the largest subsidies, and it's all they believe coming from the Chinese government. At today's regular press conference, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Jin Lian criticized the EU's investigation as an example of protectionism. However, despite many harsh words and strong statements that will come in China, these tariffs are apparently lower than what was expected. Many EU automakers lobbied against the EC investigation, and it is no wonder their stakes are high. For Volkswagen, China is the biggest market, and Mercedes-Benz is 20% controlled by Chinese companies. 10% belongs to Beijing Auto, 10% belongs to Geely. So that's interesting, guys. Now, other than that, we've just seen Chinese EV sales come out, Chinese car sales come out for the month of May. And these are surprising because if you look at China's car sales in Europe, they're kind of shockingly bad. I mean, realistically, I am very surprised to see how bad they are. Chinese car manufacturers are dominant. Look, Volkswagen sales are down 18%. That's just crazy. Geely sales grew 31.6%. So far this year, Geely sales up 40%. Geely's about to overtake Volkswagen in China. So next month, very likely Geely and BYD will be the two biggest car manufacturers in China. That used to be Nissan, Volkswagen, and Toyota. Things have completely changed there. What's going to happen in Europe? It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.